What would you do if your neighbor barged into your backyard and claimed it as their own? Not in a joking, mistaken identity kind of way, but with absolute, unshakable confidence, as if they had every right to be there. That's exactly what happened to me on what should have been an ordinary, perfect Saturday. The sun was dipping low, casting a golden hue over the yard as the smell of sizzling burgers filled the air. My wife, Lauren, was setting up plates on the patio table, while our kids, Ethan and Maddie, ran barefoot across the grass, laughing as they kicked their soccer ball back and forth. After years of grinding in a cramped city apartment, this was our dream finally realized: a peaceful backyard, space for the kids to play, weekend barbecues, and the quiet sense of security that we'd worked so damn hard for. Then, she arrived. I first heard the crunch of footsteps, a slow, deliberate trespassing sound cutting through the normal hum of our evening. I turned toward the uninvited presence now standing in my yard. A woman, middle-aged, dressed in business casual, arms crossed, face twisted into a deep, sour scowl. She wasn't walking by. She wasn't approaching the fence. No, she was standing in the middle of our yard, staring at us like we were the ones who didn't belong. "Can I help you?" I asked, lowering the spatula, already feeling an instinctive, unsettled pull in my gut. She didn't blink. "This is my property," she stated matter-of-factly, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. I actually let out a short laugh, looking at Lauren, then back at the woman. "Excuse me? This land. It belongs to me," she continued, voice steady, like she was telling me the sky was blue. "And I need you to leave." For a few seconds, I just stared at her. This had to be some kind of prank. A misunderstanding. Maybe she was confused or thought she had walked into the wrong yard. But then I saw it, the quiet smugness beneath her neutral expression. She knew exactly what she was saying. Lauren stepped closer, arms folded. "This is our property. We've lived here for months, we have the deed, the mortgage, everything. You're mistaken." The woman scoffed. "Oh, I'm not mistaken." She gestured vaguely toward the street. "I've lived in this neighborhood for years. This backyard has always been part of my property. I don't know what scam you're trying to pull, but this land is mine." I could feel the heat rising in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. "You're standing in my yard, accusing me of trespassing on my own property. That's insane. I have the paperwork to prove it." Her lips curled into a slow smirk, one that sent a chill down my spine. "Oh, I'm sure you think you do." And then, before I could say another word, she pulled out her phone and started dialing. "I'm calling the police," she announced. "You'll be off my land soon enough." The police arrived within 15 minutes, their cruiser pulling up to the curb with slow, deliberate caution. Officer Mark Reynolds stepped out, his expression unreadable as he surveyed the situation. Karen immediately rushed toward him, voice raised, playing the role of the wronged homeowner to perfection. "These people are on my property," she practically shrieked, waving a hand toward my backyard as if it was some kind of crime scene. "They refuse to leave. I've lived here for years, and now they're trying to steal my land." I stepped forward, forcing myself to keep my tone even despite the anger surging inside me. "Officer, that's not true. My wife and I bought this house months ago. We have the deed, the mortgage, and every legal document proving we own this land." Reynolds glanced between us, clearly already sensing the ridiculousness of the situation. He gestured for both of us to calm down before turning to me. "Do you have any paperwork you can show me?" Without hesitation, I retrieved the folder from inside the house, flipping to the deed and property survey that clearly outlined our lot. He examined it carefully, nodding as he read through. Then, he turned to Karen. "Ma'am, these documents confirm that this property legally belongs to Mr. Carter." Karen's face twisted, but she recovered quickly, adopting a faux outraged expression. "I don't care what some papers say. I've been using this land for years. The HOA even recognizes my claim. You need to get them off my property before I call my lawyer." I saw Reynolds exhale, his patience thinning. "Ma'am, legal ownership trumps personal history. Unless you have a court ruling or evidence of an easement, you cannot claim this land as yours. If you continue trespassing, you could face legal consequences." For a second, I thought that would be the end of it. That she would finally accept reality and leave. But then I saw it, that gleam of defiance in her eyes, the one that told me she wasn't going anywhere. This wasn't over. She turned toward me, her lips curling into a smirk, voice dropping low enough for only me to hear. "You just made a big mistake," she whispered, before spinning on her heel and marching off toward her house. At that moment, I didn't realize just how right she was. The next morning, the first letter from the HOA arrived. A crisp white envelope, hand-delivered and stamped with urgent notice in red ink. Inside, a formal notice. "Mr. Carter, the HOA has received complaints regarding unauthorized modifications to your property, including fencing and land use violations. You are required to attend a hearing with the HOA board to discuss corrective actions." Lauren read over my shoulder, her face tightening. She wasted no time. "This is insane," I muttered, gripping the paper. "What unauthorized modifications? We haven't done anything." Lauren took a deep breath. "She's using the HOA against us." And she was right. That was only the beginning. That night, strange cars started parking in front of our house. Different ones each time, never staying long, but just long enough to be unsettling. The following morning, someone left a folded note in our mailbox, handwritten in all caps. "This isn't your home. It's hers." The fence that had stood undisturbed since we moved in? Vandalized. Someone had spray-painted "thief" across the wood. It didn't stop there. The very next day, a city inspector knocked on our door, clipboard in hand, informing us that our home had been flagged for immediate zoning review. When I pressed for details, he hesitated before saying, "We received an anonymous complaint about illegal land use." I didn't need to guess who had sent it. Karen wasn't just harassing us. She was waging psychological warfare. I tried to reason with the HOA at the scheduled meeting. I showed them our deed, the property survey, and even the police report. But Karen sat calmly across the room, arms folded, a satisfied look on her face. "She's lying," I said firmly. "She has no claim to my property, and she knows it. But she's manipulating this HOA to harass us." Karen gasped, putting a hand to her chest in mock horror. "That's quite the accusation," she purred. "I'm only trying to ensure the integrity of our neighborhood." Some members of the board shifted uncomfortably. Others exchanged knowing glances, but no one spoke up. It was clear, Karen had them in her pocket. By the end of the meeting, they ruled that our fence was out of compliance, and we were given 7 days to remove it or face fines. Lauren clenched her fists as we walked back to our car. She's trying to take away the only thing standing between her and our backyard. And she was winning. The war was no longer just about a fence or a backyard. Karen had made it personal. Days after the HOA meeting, we woke up to something far worse than vandalized wood or empty threats. Bright red, "No trespassing" signs were planted all over our backyard, our own land. They weren't flimsy little warnings either. Karen had hired professionals to install them, each one drilled into the ground like a permanent fixture. Lauren stood by the back door, arms crossed, eyes scanning the mess in disbelief. She's trying to claim the yard as hers, right in front of our faces. I stormed outside, ready to rip them out of the ground, when I noticed something worse, a camera mounted on a metal pole near the fence. A security camera, pointing directly at our backyard. "What the hell is this?" I muttered, spinning toward Karen's house. She was already standing on her porch, watching. She smiled. "Oh, that? Just protecting my property from trespassers. After all, it's still under dispute, isn't it?" My blood boiled. "You have no claim to this land, Karen." She shrugged. "Then go ahead. Take the signs down. But when you do, I'll call the police and report you for destroying my property. I have everything on video now." She had me trapped. If I touched the signs, I'd be the one breaking the law. If I didn't, it would look like I was accepting her claim. That night, Lauren and I sat in the living room, exhausted. "She's escalating," she said quietly, flipping through a folder of documents we had gathered. "And we're playing defense. She's setting us up." I had no idea how right she was. The next day, Child Protective Services showed up at our door. Lauren answered, and the moment she saw the badge clipped to the woman's belt, her entire body tensed. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to conduct a welfare check," the woman said, glancing inside. "We received an anonymous report about unsafe conditions for your children." Lauren's face went pale. "What?" I stepped in. "Unsafe conditions?" I repeated, incredulous. "Our house is perfectly safe." "What exactly was reported?" The woman hesitated. "The complaint states that your backyard has become a hazardous environment. The report mentioned exposed nails, unstable fencing, and a general lack of safe play areas." I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. "You've got to be kidding me." Lauren, visibly shaking, turned to the woman. "This is a false report. Our backyard isn't hazardous. Someone is trying to use the system to harass us." But CPS had to investigate. They inspected the yard, our home, everything. By the end of it, they found nothing wrong. Still, we were left with a warning: if another complaint was filed, CPS would have no choice but to escalate things further. Karen had taken it to an entirely new level. She wasn't just trying to steal our land anymore. She was trying to ruin our lives. 2 days later, a lawsuit was delivered to our door. Karen was suing us. Lauren ripped the envelope open and scanned the first few lines, her face contorting with disbelief. "She's suing us for emotional distress." I grabbed the papers, reading in horror. "She's claiming that our aggressive behavior and false accusations have caused her extreme anxiety and mental suffering." I could barely breathe. She was trying to flip the script. That night, I installed security cameras all around our property. If Karen wanted to play dirty, I was going to make sure we had evidence. Every inch of our land was now recorded. If she so much as set foot in our yard again, we'd have her on tape. But Karen wasn't finished. The next morning, she staged an accident. At 6 a.m., before the sun had fully risen, our security alarm went off. I ran to the back door, yanking it open, only to see Karen sprawled out on the ground, clutching her ankle. She looked up, gasping in exaggerated pain. "Oh! Oh my God!" I slipped. I could already see her game. "You're trespassing, Karen," I said coldly, crossing my arms. She let out a pitiful moan. "I was just checking the fence line. Making sure you hadn't, oh God, my ankle." Then, she pulled out her phone and started dialing. She was calling 911. 20 minutes later, an ambulance arrived. So did the police. Officer Reynolds, looking exhausted, glanced between Karen and me. "Let me guess," he said. "You're claiming they're responsible for your injury?" Karen's performance was Oscar-worthy. "I was just checking on my property," she whimpered. "Then I tripped over some debris. I think they left it there on purpose." The paramedics loaded her into the ambulance, and as she was wheeled away, she smirked at me. She had set us up for a lawsuit. That afternoon, my lawyer confirmed it. Karen had already filed a claim, accusing us of negligence and demanding medical damages. It wasn't just a fight for our backyard anymore. Karen was trying to bury us in legal trouble until we had no choice but to give up. But what she didn't know was that we had everything on camera. And I was done playing defense. Karen had backed us into a corner, but she didn't realize we had been collecting every piece of evidence since the day she barged into our backyard. The moment my lawyer confirmed that she was suing us for negligence and emotional distress, I knew it was time to stop playing her game. She had spent weeks trying to turn the system against us, filing false reports, staging an injury, and manipulating the HOA into siding with her. But what Karen didn't know was that we had cameras recording everything. I spent that night combing through every security video, every email, every absurd letter she had sent. I found the exact footage of her sneaking into our yard, planting those "no trespassing" signs, and even inspecting the fence before she faked her accident. The timestamp on the footage proved she was trespassing before she fell. That's when it hit me. Karen had always counted on controlling the narrative, the HOA, the police, and the neighbors. She worked in the shadows, twisting reality into something that fit her delusions. The only way to win was to take that control away from her. So I took the fight public. I reached out to a local journalist who specialized in exposing corruption and HOA overreach. At first, he was skeptical. After all, disputes over fences and property lines weren't exactly headline material. But when I showed him the evidence, the videos, the CPS visit, and the fake injury claim, his attitude changed. "Wait, she staged a fall," he muttered, scrolling through the footage of Karen carefully positioning herself before flopping onto the ground. "And she filed a fraudulent claim to steal our land," I added. "She's been harassing us for weeks. Look at this letter," she literally threatened us in writing. The journalist leaned back, shaking his head. "Yeah. This isn't just some HOA drama. This is a full-blown case of fraud and harassment." That's all I needed to hear. The article that changed everything. 2 days later, the article hit the local news. The headline was brutal. "Homeowner faces HOA bullying and legal harassment in suburban land grab." The story outlined everything Karen had done. It detailed how she had falsified claims to the HOA to pressure us into removing our fence, filed false complaints with CPS to weaponize the system against us, faked an injury to create a lawsuit for financial gain, illegally planted signs and trespassed on our property. It even included the security footage stills, Karen sneaking into our yard at night, the fake fall, the smirk she gave me as she was being wheeled away by paramedics. The public reaction was immediate. Comments flooded in, people outraged over the HOA's involvement and Karen's blatant lies. Neighbors who had once sided with Karen started speaking out. Some even admitted that she had tried similar tactics on them. The HOA scrambled to distance themselves from her. Within 24 hours, they issued a statement claiming they had been misled and would be reviewing their enforcement policies. But Karen didn't go down without a fight. Karen's meltdown and the final mistake. The morning after the article was published, Karen showed up on our front lawn, screaming. "You think you can humiliate me like this?" she shrieked, jabbing a finger at me. "You think this is over? I'll ruin you. I'll take this all the way to the Supreme Court." She wasn't just unhinged anymore, she was desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. In full view of our cameras, the neighbors, and a local news crew, Karen stormed into our yard and started ripping down the security cameras. Lauren gasped, yanking out her phone. She's literally committing vandalism on camera." I didn't stop her. I let her dig her own grave. When Officer Reynolds showed up 20 minutes later, he had no patience left for her. "Ms. Davis," he said, voice laced with exhaustion. "You've trespassed, committed vandalism, and violated a court order to stay off this property. You're under arrest." Karen's face twisted into horrified disbelief as the officer pulled out his handcuffs. "You can't do this," she shrieked. I'm the victim here." Reynolds just sighed. "Ma'am, there's a news crew filming you. You're done." And just like that, the nightmare started to unravel for Karen. Her lawsuit against us was thrown out, and when our lawyer countersued for harassment and damages, she was forced to pay thousands in legal fees. But that wasn't even the worst of it. The city launched an investigation into Karen's past real estate dealings. Turns out, she had been doing this for years, harassing homeowners, pressuring them to sell, and flipping the properties for massive profits. She had left a trail of victims. And now, with all eyes on her, they finally started to fight back. The final blow. The last time I saw Karen, she was standing on her front porch, talking to her lawyer. She wasn't screaming anymore. She wasn't smirking. She looked defeated. A week later, she put her house on the market. She was leaving town. Lauren, standing beside me as we watched the moving trucks roll in, let out a slow exhale. I never thought we'd actually win. I wrapped an arm around her shoulders, watching Karen's once perfect lawn get trampled by movers who clearly didn't care. She thought she was unstoppable, I murmured. She thought she could break us. Karen's car backed out of the driveway, and for the first time in months, I felt a real sense of peace. But before she disappeared down the street, she turned her head, eyes locking with mine through the windshield. And even though she was leaving, I could still see it in her face. The hatred. The resentment. The fact that she lost. She had played every trick in the book. But in the end, she was the one who had to leave. I turned to Lauren and smiled. "Let's get rid of those "no trespassing" signs." We had one. The neighborhood felt different after Karen left. The air felt lighter, the tension that had sat heavy on our chests for months had finally lifted. The constant paranoia of what she would pull next was gone, replaced by the kind of peace we had been chasing since we first moved in. But the scars of the battle remained. The security cameras stayed up, the paperwork documenting every legal step we had to take was neatly filed away, and even though the house was ours, I still found myself checking over my shoulder every time I stepped outside. Karen's downfall had been as public as her arrogance. The lawsuit against us was dismissed with prejudice, meaning she couldn't refile. Our countersuit forced her to pay damages, a small fraction of what she had put us through, but enough to sting. The city's investigation into her past dealings uncovered a pattern of harassment, leading to multiple lawsuits from other victims. Her business partners turned on her, cutting ties the moment her name became toxic. And as a final blow, she was banned from holding any position in the HOA ever again. It turned out, she hadn't just harassed us, she had manipulated board members for years, bending rules in her favor while bullying homeowners who didn't comply. In the end, she did the one thing I never expected her to do. She ran. She sold her house in a rush, packed up her life, and disappeared. Maybe she thought she could start over somewhere new, find another neighborhood to sink her claws into. But this time, she wouldn't get away with it. She had built her life on control, manipulation, and intimidation, and now, everyone knew exactly who she was. Lauren and I stood in our backyard the night she finally left, watching the moving trucks disappear down the street. The irony wasn't lost on me. After all the times she told us to leave, she was the one forced to pack up and go. As I leaned against the porch railing, watching our kids chase each other across the grass, I thought about how close we had come to losing everything. We had fought harder than we ever imagined, forced to defend something that should have never been in question, our own home. But we won. And in the end, that was what mattered. Have you ever had to fight back against an HOA or a nightmare neighbor? What's the worst experience you've had, and how did you handle it? Let's hear your stories below.